Buenos días, amigos, amigas. Bienvenidos a la
Good morning, friends. Welcome to the Tripartite Foundation, the House of Dialogue and Training. We're going to start the meeting. We pass the floor to Engracia Hidalgo, Secretary of State for Employment, Ambassadors of India and Japan, Consul of South Korea, Director of the Asia House, Vice Presidents, members of the board and the management of the Tripartite Foundation, workers, dear friends. Good morning to everyone. I want to begin by congratulating the Foundation for organizing this Hispano-Asian Day on training for employment. This event will allow us to have first-hand knowledge of the different systems of training for employment in the Asian continent and exchange thoughts and points of view in this regard. It is the colophon of an ambitious program of contacts with countries from all over the world that's being carried out by the Foundation during its present mandate. All productive systems should have training for employment which is efficient and which allows a permanent updating of professional competencies of workers and the improvement of their employability. Training is a key element of competitiveness of companies and therefore of sustained growth of any economy. Training is the most important active employment policies because its function is to promote the incorporation of human capital into the productive system. People who at some stage have lost their jobs and must retrain in order to rejoin the productive economy. Globalization and the complexity of the economy, which is more and more interdependent in this century, adds new value to training for employment. I think that we've gone beyond this old idea that we had that you could get a job for life. That has gone forever. Conditions of our environment lead to a situation where people throughout their professional career will have to train and train again in order to adapt to the conditions. And that is the new paradigm of our world today. In the case of the countries represented here, we are interested in knowing how they cover the demand within the workplace. In Asia, where we have the emerging countries that are growing at the fastest rate in the world. They've got tremendous manpower, very well qualified forces, employment personnel, and they are very adjustable to the changes of the world. India offers very great possibilities for investment, thanks to the high level of technological and linguistic development of its workers. And there are a lot of family companies which are similar to the makeup of the Spanish small family business network. We will have here from India the President of the National Agency for Development of Competencies, consultant and advisor of the Prime Minister of India on development of competencies, and president of the Council or Board of Management of the Social Sciences Institute and the Institute for Management. South Korea is a reference in terms of education all over the world. In that country, education policies are always associated with the demand of the market. Professional and vocational training and employment training is very much developed in Korea since 2010. It has specialized in different sectors and industries. The director of the Human Resources Policy Center at the Institute for Research into Employment will explain how Korea faces the challenge of qualifying people to adjust to the changes of the world economy. Japan understands training as a guarantee for the future and for social and economic success, and this explains why the family is completely devoted to training and the high importance that companies give to high qualification of their employees. Therefore, Japan pays special attention to vocational training. The president of the International Employment Foundation in Japan and a well-known trade unionist in his country will give us a view of their system of professional and vocational training. Spain has addressed in recent years the need to perform deep changes in our productive system. The severe crisis that we have suffered since the end of 2008 has revealed big and serious deficiencies in structural elements of our productive system, which we have had to restructure with clear commitment. And training for employment has also been a part of this, because the system was obsolescent and was not adjusted to the economy. The Spanish employment training system has improved undoubtedly in the last decades. The level of professional and vocational competence of our workers has improved. However, and this has happened in many other countries in our area, the changes in the economy and the world crisis have caused training to fall behind in terms of what the market needed and what the production system needed. And therefore, it was necessary to close that gap. And all politicians and policymakers, employers, trade unions were agreed on that. And we reached the government and the social interlocutors in 2014 reached an agreement that helped to roll forward the changes that have been introduced. And the Accounts Tribunal and our Constitutional Tribunal have issued reports and judgments that have set up the roadmap that we have to follow. After a very intense social dialogue process with the participation of all the social partners, the Royal Decree on 22 March 2015 was approved to reform the system for employment training, and that is now going through Parliament to become law. These are the basic elements of this new model. First of all, solidarity that is established by catering for workers and people that are unemployed, and the support that is offered to training within SMEs, which the system is giving more financial support thanks to the solidarity and collaboration of other bigger companies. Another element is how coherent this is with the decentralization process of the state, and we recognize the need to allow each region to follow their own policies, but have a systematic, comprehensive, integrated system for the whole country. Companies, workers, and trainers in our country need more than ever in our country certainty and to be able to get ahead in this competitive, complex world. Therefore, strategic planning and the detection of needs are two basic lines of the new training model. And we are going to develop an efficient observation and prospection work or employment market model, and this will include the new industries and sectors with a potential for growth and the horizontal competencies that are needed. The new model gives special importance to program training prepared by companies, which will be the training that will allow a higher level of competitiveness, and also a new role for social partners and collective bargaining, since workers and employers are those who know the reality of the market best, because they are closer to everyday life and what goes on. And the new system also underscores and emphasizes continuous assessment of quality and the impact of training on improvement in performance of workers and improvement of competitiveness of companies. All that, together with management principles based on the maximum efficiency and transparency, will lead to a better management of all the areas within training. All this has meant that in our country we have made a huge advance in terms of training, and training is now a key element for competitiveness and employability. There will be novel formulas like the training check, or like tele or remote training, distance learning, and the use of new technologies for training. We believe that our experience and our perspective for evolution and change can be of use to other systems and countries, and we await with great interest to hear from these other countries to see what we can learn from other people. Spain must accept any opportunity that it has to learn from other successful experiences, such as the ones we're going to hear from the experts from Korea and Japan. And I want to thank, and India, and I want to thank on behalf of the government and the foundation, I want to thank the organizers and the participants once again. This, I hope, is a fruitful debate for you today, and we are able to all improve our employment training system in Spain, because this is a reform and something which is going to benefit the future generations, competitiveness of companies and employability of all people. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Tiene la palabra. Muchas gracias.
Pass the floor. Thank you, Secretary of State, to Teresa Rodriguez del Álamo, who's the manager of Casas in Spain. Secretary of State, ambassadors, speakers, ladies, gentlemen, good morning. I would like, first of all, to congratulate the Tripartite Foundation for Employment, represented here by the maximum authority, the Secretary of State for Employment, for this excellent initiative. And the Asia House is very thankful to you for having invited us to participate in this meeting devoted to training models in India, Japan, and South Korea. I must also thank the embassies for their consultancy services, their guidance, and their support. Without their collaboration, we would not have been able to invite these top-level speakers to this meeting. Thank you very much, ambassadors, once again. Last but not least, we must thank the Tripartite Foundation itself and its team, and the team of the Asia House, for organizing this meeting. Ricardo Visado, Cecil Senen, for their enthusiasm and their tremendous hard work, which has made it possible for us to be here today. The Secretary of State has practically said everything, so I haven't got much to say, but I would like, from all what she said, which is interesting, I would like to underscore that no model can really be directly extrapolated from one country to another, but what we can do is gain an inspiration from different countries in the way they face challenges. The history of countries is a series of events which are unique for every country, but we all go through similar stages in history, and it's not a bad idea at all to look at our neighbors and even further away countries to see how they do things. I think that the choice of these three countries has been tremendously happy, because these three countries are in three different situations and their characteristics are very different. We live in Europe and we must realize that our dimension compared to the dimension of Asia is very small. I mean, we're as small except for Korea, which would be one of our peers in Asia. The rest of these countries are way beyond us in terms of population, production, GDP. But enormous countries like India cannot produce global solutions, because diversity means that we can't apply the same formula to everybody. We also in our country have a huge level of diversity, and we must see how we can address that diversity without trying to put everybody in a uniform and kill that diversity. Japan obviously has a model which is based on stability, on loyalty, that has allowed it to have very strong companies and corporations, reliable, very reliable. You can trust Japanese business. Training in Japan has always been done within the companies themselves by adjusting them to adjusting training to the needs of the companies. But Japan is facing a change, and there's not just room for those large companies. The startups, the small SMEs, the small initiatives must also have, there must be a place for them within training and employment training policies. Japan and Korea have always had a tremendous ability to accept innovation. And in fact, they have always been leaders in technological innovation. But the new ways in which this is developing today will demand from them a change too. India, I've mentioned before, India is a different country. It's a country with an very strong intellectual elite, tremendous universities, business schools. They have a Silicon Valley of their own, which is Bangalore, which is leader in the whole world in terms of technological innovation and development. But they have a gigantic challenge, which is to get that, to put that elite in line with the rest of the country and the population. But we must not forget that very soon India is going to be the second or third power in the world. I've got nothing to add and nothing more, just to thank you once again for being here. Thank you very much to the Secretary of State for being here to open this session, and once again to the ambassadors, the speakers who've come from so far away. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Teresa. I'll pass the floor to the ambassador from India, Vikram Misri. Thank you very much. I'm going to speak in English because at this time my Spanish is just for survival in supermarkets, and this is not a supermarket.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary of State, Teresa, my good friend, Ambassador Koshikawa from Japan, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start with Fundación Tripartita and Casa Asia for organizing this event and for inviting us to be part of it. It's a pleasure to take part in this with this distinguished gathering today. You've heard this morning some words said about the challenges that India faces in the field of training and skill development. It's an opportunity as well as a challenge for India to impart skills to its growing population that is entering the workforce. And just to give you an idea of what those opportunities and challenges are like. India is today facing a demographic opportunity, a demographic dividend. We are one of the youngest nations in the world today, possibly the youngest nation in the world today. 62% of our population is in the age group of 15 to 59, which is the most productive section of the population. That means that there are nearly 750 million people in India in the productive workforce sector of the population. More than 54% of our population is under the age of 25. That shows you the kind of potential that is waiting to enter the workforce. It is surmised that the average age of an Indian in the year 2020, 5 years from now, will be 29. And just to give you a comparison, it will be 40 in the United States, 46 in Europe, and 47 in Japan. In the next 20 years, the labor force in the industrialized world will decline by 4%. In India, on the other hand, the labor force will increase by 32%. This is an idea of the opportunities that lie before India. But obviously, the challenge is to equip our workforce with the employable skills and the knowledge that is required to benefit from this opportunity that is before us. And it is for this reason that skill development and training of the workforce has always been a matter of high priority for any Indian government. Some years ago, a National Council on Skill Development was set up by the government of India, and it was directly supervised by the cabinet. But the current government has gone even further and has set up a dedicated ministry for skill development and entrepreneurship, which now has a dedicated minister looking after it. The scale of the problem, nevertheless, is huge. I spoke about the opportunities, but the challenges are equally large. There was a skill gap study that was done in India just last year, and it showed that we would need about 120 million skilled workers in 24 sectors by the year 2020. India's workforce right now is about the magnitude of 487 million people. 51% of this workforce is in the non-farm sector. That means about 250 million people are working in the non-farm sector. But only 10% of this 250 million have formal skills and formal training. 157 million of these 250 million people are in the age group of 15 to 45. And it is this sector that we have to map and then impart the right kind of skills to. And this is not talking about the 150 million people in India who are in the farm sector, who also need certain skills and an upgradation of their skills so that productivity in farms and in the rural and agricultural sector in India can also be improved. The other great opportunity in India right now is to correct our structural imbalance insofar as our GDP is concerned, our gross domestic product is concerned. 65% of India's gross domestic product today comes from the services sector. About 15 or 16% comes from the agricultural sector, and only about 15 to 16% comes from the manufacturing sector. Now, as you all know, the agriculture sector can generate jobs, but very little growth. The services sector can generate very high growth, but not so many jobs. It's only the manufacturing sector that can generate healthy growth as well as healthy jobs. And it is in the manufacturing sector, therefore, that India has to concentrate to achieve a structural transformation of its gross domestic product. And that is also the reason for the emphasis of the government of India on many projects and many schemes that are dedicated to increasing manufacturing in India. And the Make in India scheme of the new government is aimed primarily at that. But Make in India can succeed only when we have the right number and the right kind of people trained to work in those manufacturing spaces that will be set up, and that will be set up also in cooperation with foreign companies who we are inviting to bring more foreign direct investment to India. I think even these few figures give you a good picture and convey the fact that probably no country in the world faces the kind of challenge that India does in terms of skill development and training for its population. Our annual skilling capacity currently is about 7 million people per year. But when you see that 10 to 12 million people are joining the workforce every year, you realize that we have a large gap that is to be made up. We need to take up our skilling capacities, build up industry-employer linkages with the training institutes. And this is one of the reasons why there has been so much focus by the government of India on developing training schemes and on now setting up a dedicated ministry that looks after skill development and training. And we have a lot of expectation from our foreign partners also in this venture. What India is doing in the field of skill development and training, I will not tell you, because we have the benefit of having an extremely distinguished speaker from India who is an expert in this field. But not only does he have an insider's view on skill development, he also has the ultimate view because he himself has been a very, very successful member of India's business sector. Mr. Ramadorai, who is the chairman of the National Skill Development Agency and the National Skill Development Corporation, has also been one of the most successful business leaders that India has produced. He headed one of India's most famous companies and one of the world's largest IT companies, Tata Consultancy Services. When he took over, I think, sir, it was about 20 years ago, Tata Consultancy Services was only about a $150 million company. When he left it 10 or 12 years later, it was a $7 billion company, and it's about twice that size today. So I will not speak anything about what India is planning to do in the field of skill development. I will leave that to him. Thank you again for inviting me here this morning. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, embajador.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now I hand it over to the Japanese ambassador in Spain, His Excellency Mr. Koshihawa. Your Excellency Mrs. Hidalgo, Secretary of State for Employment, Mr. Lopez, Vice Chairman of the Tripartite Foundation, Mrs. Gutierrez, Director of Casa Asia in Madrid, and dear Ambassador and friend Bigram, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I am quite nervous because I'm supposed to address you some words after our Indian colleague took the floor. How to tell Japanese apart from other Asians? I mean, those who speak the most are from China or India. Those who say very little come from Japan. So you can understand my fear. I have a very brief presentation for you. Dear friends, it is a pleasure for me to be part of this forum organized by the Tripartite Foundation and Casa Asia. As you all know, Asia is a world under constant transformation. On-the-job training is an essential model for our companies to be more dynamic and competitive and to adapt themselves to a rapidly changing reality. That's why our discussions today will be very useful to obtain more knowledge about this. We want to maintain our working population and increase productivity, one of the two most important objectives for the future of Japan. Since our society, as we heard before, is aging at a rapid pace, the Japanese government has put together 3 different policies to face up to these challenges. First of all, to incorporate more women to the labor market and to develop a good atmosphere for these workers to develop their full potential. Secondly, to offer more diverse and different working methods where quality is the most important priority, more than working long hours in offices and factories. And thirdly, incorporating more qualified foreign workers into our economy. I would like to refer to the first policy I've mentioned. Japanese women workers are the most significant factor for growth. It is difficult for them to reconcile their work with their family life. This is a tremendous challenge. If we manage to overcome this challenge, we will be revitalizing the Japanese society, will be adding value and creativity to our economy and to our society. Public administrations and companies share a common objective: to employ a minimum of 30% of women in top positions by the year 2020. 30% of women in top positions by the year 2020. Training for employment, which is the subject matter of this day, of this meeting, is the way to attain all of our goals. Without qualification and training, it would be impossible to increase productivity in Japan and to reach the efficiency levels that companies need in Japan. The Japanese government supports companies and helps them to attain their goals in training their workers. Mr. Nagmo, who is here with us today, will now take the floor. He is the Secretary General of the largest Japanese trade union, representing 6.8 million workers. He's now the chairman of the International Labor Association in Japan. Mr. Yoshida is also here with us. He's the International Director General of this trade union confederation. So this provides us with a wonderful opportunity to get to know more about the situation in Japan. The Spanish government likewise wishes to change Spain's productive model by boosting exports. And to boost exports, you need to provide workers with the right training. You need to have a flexible workforce able to adapt itself to the increasingly demanding needs of companies, and the job training is a very efficient tool to meet our goals in this area. I would like to thank the organizers of this meeting, the Tripartite Foundation, and Casa Asia. And I wish you a very fruitful and successful meeting. I learned Spanish some 30 years ago in the main square of Salamanca. I haven't spoken Spanish in the past 30 years. That's why my Spanish leaves a lot to be desired. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador Koshikawa. Your Spanish, by the way, is excellent. Very good. As I told you before, we'll be appointing you as Spanish ambassador in other countries because you're a true lover of Spanish things.